recording again and start the meeting. Welcome to the City Council Finance Committee meeting of June 10th. We have minutes from the May 21st meeting. Thank you, Mr. Lynch, for Councilor Lynch, for giving them to us. I'll take a motion to approve.
I have a question.
Yep.
Well, we can do the motion if you want first.
Up to you.
What do you want to do, Dan?
Ask the question.
Okay, so I have a comment about the minutes just in general, in that my preference would be that if we're going to have minutes from a budget meeting, we ought to have numbers in those minutes. And I didn't see any numbers, Billy. So I just feel like I'm not comfortable voting yes for the minutes, because I feel like we need to have a little bit more data for the public to read those minutes to understand what we talked about. I was in the meeting and I'm not sure I fully understood the minutes, Bill. So if you guys want to vote on it, that's fine, but I think we may want to hold off. Just my opinion. Dan, you're muted.
Bill, can you put numbers in?
Yep.
Okay, we'll wait on the minutes till the next meeting.
Okay.
And I tend to agree with that. Numbers are important for the public to see them. Mayor communication, Mayor LaChapelle, anything other than what's on the agenda this evening?
Just quickly, this Sunday, the 14th, it's Flag Day, and there's a flag retirement ceremony at 6 p.m. and behind the American Legion. So I just wanted to get that out for anybody who may be listening. 6 p.m. Sunday, flag retirement behind the American Legion. That's all.
Okay, now we have public speak. I will allow the public to speak now on any topic that's on our agenda, but this is the only time you'll be able to speak. Once you're done speaking, I would ask that you turn your video off. If you're a member of the fire department, you will be allowed to speak during that contract. You'll be allowed to make statements, and during that contract appropriation discussion, you'll be allowed to make statements. But others, if you want to make statements, now is the time. When you do speak, please state your name for the record, and if you're associated with the city in any way. So, public speak. Anybody want to say anything now?
And you have the ability to raise your hand virtually if you want to do that. I'm not seeing any.
Okay. We'll begin with the two appropriations that revolve around the union contract, the fire union contract. I want to tell you how I like to proceed here. First, I will have the councilors ask questions of city administration people, such as Mr. Dixon. Then I will ask for statements and discussion from the fire department personnel. You'll have ample time to make any statements you'd like to make. Then I will move to comments from the administration, anyone in the administration that wants to speak to the fire contract. And then I will have a councilors only discussion for statements and a final vote. So right now, I'm going to open it up to questions from councilors, and I'll begin for Mr. Dixon. Bob, where are you? I don't see him. Is he still here? Oh, there you are, Bob. I'm unmuting you, Bob. Here's a question. When was this contract signed? What by the mayor and administration? What was the date?
Could you repeat that, please?
When was the contract signed? What was the date?
Oh, back about, I'm going to say the middle of March, toward the end of March.
Is that accurate, Mayor? Middle of March. You could just shake. You're muted. Now you're not muted. No, you are muted.
I have a copy of it that I can get for you.
No, I just want to make sure. It was the middle of March. Okay.
Toward the end of March.
Well, right, the agreement was.
Right, okay.
Between the parties.
As I understand it, Bob, you started around that time too, taking over in personnel, is that correct?
February
Date of employment.
February 3rd.
Okay, it's important to me because most of the negotiation happened before your time.
Yes.
Last thing I want to do is talk about, for myself, is talk about numbers. I'm going to call up this document, which we saw last week. Does everybody see it?
Yes.
I want to confirm the numbers. This is what we're dealing with tonight. Over 3 years, it's $425,458. Those were given to us by the treasurer. And as I read this is a 3.5% increase over 3 years. Am I reading that right? 1.5 in 20, 1.5 in 21, and 0.5 in 22. Am I correct?
So it should be 1.5 on July 1 of 19, 1.5 on July 1 of 20, 1.5% on July 1 of 21.
Which are fiscal years. Okay.
Yeah, fiscal year, July 1, 21. And there was a 0.5% more on January 1 of 2022. I think it is. 19, 20, 21. Yeah, on January 1 of 22, there's another 0.5%.
So it's 3.5%. Okay. I'm going to leave these up. Other
Oh,
counselors.
excuse me. That's incorrect. It's three times 1.5 and a half. So that should be almost 5%.
Oh, my mistake. Yeah, I don't know how to do math. Of course I do. Well, I didn't see this. I saw these two, so yes, it's 5%. 5% increase over 3 years.
Right.
Okay. Counselors, I don't have any other questions myself. And we're dealing with both appropriations. Peg?
Yeah, I do. Can you scroll a little bit over, Dan?
This way?
The other way, sorry. So, I have a couple of questions. One is around the overtime. And actually, Dan, let me start with the number that's there, the 52,706.62 is not what is being asked for in this appropriation. So my assumption is that we have gotten more recent numbers for the adjusted budget, and so the math is different. So if maybe somebody could explain to me why this document says 52,000 and change, but the appropriation is for 50,954.74.
Do I have the wrong one up, Jen? Jen, go on.
I'm right here, sorry. Bob, did you forward the last one that you were given? There is a spreadsheet that matches, the 52 matches the appropriation. The only difference is that my 52 had the chief and the deputy chief positions education incentives still included in the education incentive, and they're not subject to this contract. So we had to pull that 2,000 out.
So that's how we get to the 50,954?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then okay. Thank you, Jen. So then my questions are around overtime. So if you start with fiscal year 20, overtime was budgeted at 150,000. Then it went up 107% in the adjusted budget. And so my first question is, what drove 107% increase from the original budget? That's question one. And then we'll go up from there to the 20, to make that whole. Looks like overall it's going to be 110% increase in the overtime from what we budgeted to what then is being asked in this adjusted budget with 1.5% increase. And I just wondered what is driving that.
Okay. Well, to start with, the increase from 150 to 310,000. So that additional money was appropriated over the course of fiscal 20. And that was based on Chief Motter's need for it and his presentation to the Finance Committee and Council in regards to it. I will say that I was told that I didn't do last year's budget, obviously, but the 150 was cut from what was originally requested. So it was kind of like a known to at least Chief that he was probably going to need more than what was in that $150,000 budget. That being said, the appropriation increased the adjusted budget to $310,000. The amount that was paid out as of May 11th, and Val would have more recent numbers. I haven't looked again, but is $215,622.68. So it's probably not going to reach the 310, but it's definitely going to be more than 150 because it already is. So basically, the way this is calculated is I took the 310 and the overtime is going to land between where it is now, which is a month ago, 215,622 and 314,650.
Okay. Because then if you look at the next year, it's back down to 100,000. And then
Yes.
the next year it's at 101, whatever. It seems to be going down.
Yes, and that was the promise based on the 4 new grant firefighters. I was told in doing the 2021 budget that because of those firefighters, the fire department should be able to significantly decrease where their overtime was this year. And I want to say the initial request came in at a little over 100,000, but that's where it was cut back to. And then, so starting in 2021, the 100,000, that's where that came from, based on them being able to cut back. And then the rest is just calculated. So that's why like 2022 starts with 101.5, because that's where it would be based on the calculations of the contract.
Okay, and then correspondingly then the salaries for the firefighters go up because now we're going to be paying salaries for 4 additional firefighters in next year.
Right, and a portion of it.
Okay.
And overtime goes up, Jen, correct? If salaries go up, overtime thus is based on that, correct?
Well, yes, the dollar figure of overtime goes up. The understanding, in looking at these numbers is that the need for the hours of overtime will decrease. So, even though per hour the cost will be more, it should be decreased by a significant amount of hours.
That's, yep. Thank you. Anything else, Peg?
I'll defer to Bill and then maybe have more after that.
Bill, do you have questions?
The 1.5 increase, that you referred to earlier, Bob, or that Dan asked, what was that on? What was that increase question? The total everything?
It's 5% over 3 years, Bill.
Right, for everything, for all of the categories?
I believe that's salary, but I'm not sure. Bob,
Bob?
you're muted.
No, there was a you can see where everything goes up by the 1.5%, there's a 5%, we call it that without compounding it. But there's also an increase in the educational.
That's what I was gonna get to. Is that include the educational incentive? Because that went up substantially over the breakdown here. So I don't know if you can walk me through that increase.
Let me see where we're here.
It seems more than 5% if I do my math quick, but I'm just want to make sure that I get the message right.
I had 5.44, Bill.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it paid out to everybody would be that number. What happened was they had 0.15 for each credit hour of college courses and stuff like that. And the attorney offered them to settle the contract was 0.20. So you see that the educational incentive in the fire department actually went up by 1.33%. From 0.15 to 0.20 is a 33% increase.
Can I just, if I can just add to that, if you don't mind,
Sure.
the theory behind that is like, so the way the contract is currently, because it's 0.15 per credit, it is based on, like, associate's degree would be, I think we said 15 credits or 30 credits, you know, like so it's per credits. That's how you have to look at it. That's why the increase is so much, because the 0.15 per credit. So if you're doing, 10 credits, that's 15% of, or no, you have to multiply it by the number of credits and then take that percentage of the salary. Is that clear?
Yeah, I understand it.
Okay.
I'm going to move to other counselors for questions. Counselor Peak, Counselor Brzezinski, Counselor Gomez, Counselor Rothschild, do you have any questions regarding both of these appropriations?
Right now, I'm just listening.
I'm just listening as well.
Nothing, Lindsay? Okay. Peg, do you have anything else before I move on to the fire department personnel?
Well, I apologize. I'm not following this educational incentive thing very well. So let me try to understand it. So we budgeted $180,000 originally for educational incentive, however you get there, whether it's 0.15 per whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Up to now, or at the time we did this, we had paid out $150,509 of educational credits. Mm-hmm. You adjusted the budget to $168 just because I'm guessing you assume less will be utilized. No? No. Why was the budget adjusted down to $168 for that?
Because the chief requested that money be moved from that line item to another line item over the course of 2020.
That's each squad department transfer, correct?
Exactly.
So we don't have anything to do with that. Okay.
Okay, so if we start with 180,000, and is 189,000 1.5% more than 180,000, or is it 1.5% more of 168,000?
It's actually, so hang on, I have this in my notes and I'm kind of mad that I don't have it right in front of me. But what happened is the bachelor's degree went from, Bob, do you have the current in front of you? Because I can't, or Val, I know we had talked about the percentages, but they're escaping me right now. I know that the bachelor's degree went up to 24% and was
18.
Was 18. Okay, so
18%, and that's gone to 24%.
Right.
An increase of a third.
Right. So if you had a bachelor's degree, you would get 18% of your base pay under the current contract. Now, under this one, if you have a bachelor's degree, you're going to get 24% of your base pay under this contract. So that's why this particular line item, we couldn't just take the number and multiply it by the 0.15.
Got it.
It had to be the degree to which it's going up, which is a third.
Okay, that makes sense. Do either of you know what an associate's degree was and is?
I want to say 9 and 8.
The associates, I think, was 9%.
Yeah.
And what is it now in the new contract?
It will be 12.
And how about a master's?
I don't think there's nothing for the masters.
So the highest you can go is 24% at a bachelor's. If you get a master's degree, you don't get any additional education.
Well, it's, again, don't confuse it with the police contract, because the police contract depends on which degree you have. This one here gives you credit for partial degrees.
Per credit.
You don't need a full, it's 0.15% for each credit hour you attain. So you don't have to get to that next level of associates to get 9%. You don't have to get to a bachelor's full. Some guys may be earning 14, 15%, depending on how many credit hours they have. That's why it's a little tougher to figure out than what they do with the police.
Okay,
The police,
and clearly
you need
I'm not getting this. So what would make me get 12% of an educational incentive if I'm not going for an associate's degree? Like, how do you know I'm going for an associate's degree or not?
I believe the associate's degree right now is 9, but without doing anything more, it's going to go to 12 because it's a 33% increase.
Okay, so if I have a bachelor's degree, go ahead, Jen. I'm really confused.
No, that's okay. And you know what? I'll apologize because I'm the one who kind of brought the degrees into this, only because for me it's easier to look at it from it was this to now it's that.
Yeah.
But technically, the bottom line, the way it reads is 0.15 per credit to 0.20 per credit. That's the change that this contract is bringing. So it doesn't matter if you took 1 class or if you take 18 classes, however many classes you take. If it's a 3-credit class, you get that much times the point. Now it would be 2.0. So it's in breaking it down to the associates versus bachelors. I was just trying to show that we went from, 18% for a bachelor's to 24%. And so it can't be like I'm not just multiplying by the 0.15. So that was just for kind of an example, but it's solely based on credits. So it's, it doesn't matter how many, you could have a doctorate if you wanted to. And if it's, 60 credits then, or 90 credits, 120 credits, it would just multiply by the 0.20, and that's what your addition to your pay would be.
Does that help, Peg? Doesn't look like it.
I'm not sure. So should I just erase from my mind any discussion of associates, bachelors, 24, 18, 12, or 9? Yes. Get rid of it. Those are irrelevant. If I take a class and I'm a firefighter and I get 3 credits for it, I take 3 times 0.20 and I get times my salary, or is that how that works? And then I get a check for that.
Correct. Forget
all the other numbers.
In your head. Yes.
Yep.
It's an educational incentive.
Okay.
And again, it's all for this department. It could be all over the place. Somebody may have 15 credits. Somebody else may have 35 credits, 60 credits. The police department's a little different. They do it by degree.
Is there a cap on how many credits I, as a firefighter, can take in a year?
I don't think there's any limit. I have to ask a firefighter, but I don't see anything in the contract says you're limited to X, Y, Z, 3 credits or 10 credits. I don't see anything like that.
Okay.
I will allow the fire department to answer these things in a minute. I want to finish with questions of counselors. Any other questions from the council before I move to the fire department? We can always come back. Okay, I'm going to open it up to fire department personnel. Can you please state your name for the record and raise your hand? IAAF Easthampton. Do you have a video or not?
Yeah, I do. I'm trying to figure it out right now. My name is Mike Graney. I am Secretary Treasurer of the local and also the chairman for the negotiating committee. So to clarify on the education incentive, we're capped at a bachelor's degree, which, if my memory serves me right, is 90 credits. I might be misspoken on that. An associate's degree is 60, so actually it's 120. There are only a few members that are eligible to receive a per credit stipend based on those numbers. Everybody else can only receive up to the max for the bachelor's degree. So it's not like if I took a doctorate degree and had 500 credits, it would be 500 credits times 0.20. It would only still cap at 120 times 0.20.
Is that per year or is that just over the?
It's per pay period.
So I can take 120 credits over what span of time?
The 120 credits would take typically 4 years to complete.
Okay.
But for people hired after, and pardon me, I don't have the contract sitting right in front of me. After a certain date in time, you have to complete the entire degree and provide your transcripts to the city to be eligible for that stipend.
And you only get the stipend if you're completed with these credits, correct?
Correct. And like I said before, there's a handful of members. I don't even want to speculate a number on how many, but it's certainly less than 10 that are eligible for a per credit. Because when they were hired, there was an option that was given between longevity or college per credit incentive on that. So those members, again, I don't have the contract right in front of me, and it's been a little while since I've actually looked at this, but those members don't get the credits on a fraction of a degree.
Okay. Anybody else or anything else? Forgot your name, Greg.
Mike, sorry.
Mike.
Can I just have Mike spell his last name so I get it right?
Sure. Graney, G-R-E-A-N-Y.
Perfect.
Anybody
Thank you.
else in the EPD, EFD that wants to say anything now? No. Counselor, you'll have a moment.
Quick question.
No, wait, I'm doing only the fire department now.
I was going to ask, you've been asking questions of the firefighters.
Oh, okay. If you have a
I'm going to
question.
ask one to clarify something that was
Go
said.
ahead.
I was hoping someone might be able to take me through a number of, let's say I have a bachelor's degree and I don't know, that starting wage. How would that affect my salary? Let's say whatever the bachelor is, if you say it's 120 credits, can you run the math for us just to give everyone an example?
I think the treasurer might be able to speak better to that.
I'm happy to wait for the treasurer. Thank you.
One thing I will say is people in their probationary year, so guys and women that come into the station with a bachelor's degree have to wait 1 year before they're actually eligible for this.
Val, do you want to say something? I unmuted you, Val.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I could give you examples. I have spreadsheets on exactly how much it is. So if you have 120 credits under your belt, you get a 24% of your biweekly salary in your biweekly paycheck. So if your biweekly salary was $2,061.59, you would get $494.78 added in for education incentive.
That's a great example.
If you have 29 credits, you'd get 5.8% of your salary.
Okay.
Same way, works the same way.
So if you could just tell us what currently is the incentive so that we could say what the difference is,
It's 18%.
given the example you gave.
The example I gave, the incentive before on 120 credits was 18%, was $360.16. Now it's $494.78 on the same credits on the same salary.
So that would be, that we can do the math here. Have you done the math with the difference?
No, I don't have the difference.
494.78 and 316.16.
134.62.
I'm sorry, Bill?
Period, JP. Per pay.
134.
134.62.
It's not the maximum credits, but the credits range all the way from 29 credits to 120, depending on, how many
Sure, right, depending on where you are. I was just
JP, in that example, it's a 37% increase. JP?
37%. I heard the max was 24.
No, the total, I know, that's why I'm confused. But the difference between 494.78 and 360.16 is 37%.
It's 37%. That's a far cry from 24% if those numbers are accurate.
No, because probably the 360/16 was before the 1.5% increase on my calculations here, because I'm calculating salaries plus the 1.5%, education at the steps plus the 1.5%. So it probably also includes the 1.5%, if you understand what I'm saying. So it's not just the 18 to 24% increase, it's probably also including the 1.5% increase from their salary.
So would we take 2061.59 and add 1.5% to that?
Yeah, probably if you take the 360/16, 18, and then add the 1.5%, and then it goes from 18% to 24%. So, I mean, their salary increase is 1.5%. Then their education incentive is 24% of that new salary, whereas before it was 18% of the old salary, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do, yep.
So it's duplicated by their salary increase.
It's compounding, I think, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Compounds.
Does that help, JP?
So it's 2061 times 37%. Is that
So-
what you're saying?
So I'm saying
Jen or Val, go ahead.
2061.59 is their 1.5% increased salary. So their old calculation of 360/16, I pulled over from their previous 18%, was before the 1.5% increase on their salary. You understand what I'm saying? So the 24% is
18%
calculated.
was of a different figure than the 2006.
The 18%
What was that figure before? That now becomes 2061.
Yeah, their base salary would have been 1.5% less. So I'm looking at fiscal year 21. Let me look at 20.
If 2061.59 is 1.5% more than it was before, then the
Right.
before would be 2031.12.
Okay,
So if the 494.78 is 24% of their new salary,
yes.
and then 360/16 should be 18% of their old salary. And then if you compare the two, that's the difference, the overall percentage difference.
Yeah, I was calculating their 21 rates from their 20 rates. So I have the 1.5% added into the biweekly base. And then I increased the education incentives from how many credits they had from 18 to 24 and calculated it on their 1.5% increased base, if that makes sense. So yeah, the 360/16 was their previous education incentive before the 1.5% increase.
So if you took the previous salary without the 1.5 increase and did the 24%, I'm getting 487.44 as opposed to the 494. So it's still a pretty solid increase.
Yes.
So if you did the original base salary at the 24%, that increase is 487, where the 18% is the 360. So it's still, I didn't figure out the percentage of it, but I can figure that out quick.
About 7%-ish if you take the old salary plus the old incentive plus, and differentiate that from the new salary plus the new incentive. The difference is about a 7% overall increase.
Well, Bill's
Bill's looking at me like I've lost my mind.
All right, wait, one at a time. Bob,
Yeah, Bill's number is fairly correct. If you're going to sit there and say somebody gets, I'll just round it off, $360 a week, biweekly, for his educational incentive, that 360 at 18%, whatever the number was, 360 is going to increase up to 480. You have to increase that by a third. So that's $120 on top of that. So because 0.15 to 0.20, that's the increase. That's a 33% increase. So take my 360 I'm getting, increase that by 33%. That's $120. That's $480. Now what you have to do is add in the percentages, raises that they got, the 1.5% on each of those. That starts to pile up, and as you do it 2 or 3 times, like you say, Dan, that the 1.5% becomes 3, and another 1.5 becomes 4.5, another half becomes a 5, and those aren't without compounding. But that's what's going on.
Okay, I'd like to move on from all of this complicated accounting. For me personally, I see the bottom lines and what we're appropriating, and that's what I'm looking at. If it's all right, I'd like to let firefighters continue to speak. Mike, I still see your hand up. Did you still want to say something?
No, Counselor, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure whether I put it down or you put it down for me.
I can put it down.
Thank you very much, Counselor.
Anybody else from the fire department want to speak to this? You see anybody, Peg? That is, if you know how to raise your hand using the participations menu.
I'm not seeing anyone currently.
Okay, now I'm going to open it up to comments from the administration, from anybody that wants to make a comment on this. You don't have to, I just wanted to give that opportunity. Mayor, Val, Jen, anybody who wants to speak to it. If not, I'm going to, Mayor.
Yes. Yeah, I would just, this agreement was after several negotiating sessions, and then we brought in mediators, I negotiated it, as did the firefighter unit, in good faith, and we addressed and updated a lot of parts of the contract. And it was finished a while ago, but I want to make it very clear that this is the contract I put forward based on a very earnest and good faith effort, I know by my side, as well as the union, and we worked with mediators to get that done.
Okay. Anybody else from the administration? All right, I'm going to close this. And the discussion now will be counselors only. I'm going to begin. I respect the fire department personnel so much. Personally, they have helped me and they have helped our city. I've been on the council for 26 years. I've never had to do what I have to do today. I've always supported a contract appropriation, but I cannot do this time, primarily because this contract was negotiated in good faith by everybody prior to the ramifications of the COVID-19 pandemic and what it's doing to our budget. The state's revenue for May indicated a $2.2 billion decrease in estimated revenue. We will be lucky if we get what we're thinking we can get from the state. Revenues will have to be down, and the mayor is looking at redoing this budget in the fall. I'm going to have to vote no to these 2 appropriations now because the numbers are just way too high for what we're facing. Not because I don't respect the fire department and all the people that do great work. I simply have to be fiscally responsible to our city's budget because, as the mayor is trying to do, I don't want to see a lot of personnel laid off. And I believe that if we increase our union contracts this much, 5% over 3 years, the domino effect will be major layoffs because of our budget right now. I do hope this can be renegotiated with maybe this in mind and how much we can afford. But we can't afford this, I'm sorry. That's my comment. I'm moving on to any other counselor. Councilor Lynch or Councilor Coniff or any of the other counselors, do you want to say anything before we go to a vote?
You know, the only comment I will make is that the timing of this was unfortunate, and I given the degree to which we are asking other departments to tighten their belt and cut their budgets, this seems, to approve this would be really, I think, egregious to what we're asking other people and other departments to do. This is $430,000 over 3 years, so that's not a small number. And I just think right now, this does not feel appropriate or respectful of the other departments who have had to cut back their budgets. So I will be agreeing that this is, that I will be voting against this appropriation.
Councilor Lynch, anything?
My only question is obviously, what happens if this doesn't go through?
Goes back to the drawing board, I believe.
Back to negotiations? Is that where that
Not
goes?
to the fire department in the city, but I believe so.
You go back to the bargaining table.
Okay.
I have to admit, I've seen other cities have these issues, but in the Easthampton, this is a first for us, but so is the pandemic. That's a first. Any other counselors before we put motions on the floor? JP?
I just had some quick questions, general questions. I respect the fire department and all our public safety personnel tremendously. I would hate to vote no on this. However, I hear what everyone is saying. I have spoken many times about the fiscal constraints that we have. Just to express where we stand with contracts and our other contracts and employees with the city, I was hoping that someone might be able to elucidate any recent contracts, say with the police department, what was settled there, just to be fair to everybody to get that side of the story out.
Bob, can you tell us what the most recent contract?
No.
Something that has been accepted. If it has not been accepted, then I would not ask.
No.
The mayor would like to speak, Dan.
No, this isn't about parallel bargaining. We both went to the table and in good faith and bargained the agreement before you. I understand the will of the council, but this isn't parallel bargaining. The contract before you with the fire was based on the fire's contract and what they bring to the city. And I stand by what I bargained. I understand the
I
interest.
understand that.
I parallel bargaining and bringing that up just divides us.
I kind of
Withdraw. I will withdraw the question, given the mayor's strong opposition. If I hear no other councilors that would like to hear that information and think it's important for the discussion.
I can barely hear you, JP.
I was saying I'm willing to withdraw the question based on the mayor's point. If there is no other councilors that might also have the same question.
I don't see any. Do any other?
Hearing none. Yeah, hearing none, I withdraw the question, and I thank the mayor for bargaining in good faith.
Thank you.
Any other counselors before we vote?
One more question, Dan, if I could.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tom Peake. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
I didn't see Tom.
No, yours is probably a better question.
I was just going
Well,
to.
let's suck it up to the president.
All I was going to ask was, is this an all or nothing? Do we have the ability to approve partially? Is it the full number or no number?
I don't think we can.
The deal is before you with the
Okay.
appropriation.
I think we have to either accept or reject.
And
Councilor.
we can't negotiate the contract.
Contract you're voting on.
All we're voting on is how much it costs. We can't negotiate
yeah.
the contract details.
Gotcha.
That's up to the mayor and the fire department.
Understood.
Tom,
And if you accept year one of the contract, you've accepted the whole contract. You can't say, I like year one, I don't want two, I like three.
Right.
The
Understood.
whole package goes up. It all goes up, it all goes down.
thank you. Tom, did that help you?
No. So yeah, this might be a silly question, but I just, I guess what I'm sort of wondering, because I'd hate to be in. I understand where you guys are coming from, and obviously, I do, but I just hate to vote against anything for our firefighters.
I'm happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you guys aren't happy to be doing this either. But I guess what I'm wondering is, like, and I know that this is a counselor's only discussion, but it's just something at some point before the final vote, I'd sort of like to hear about is, like, okay, so let's just say that we were to approve this. And then let's say that these things came into effect, and then that our situation from COVID was sort of the worst case scenario, and we ended up having like some really severe budget shortfalls. You know, I'd be kind of interested in how the fire department would sort of suggest we handle that. Do they think that this is the sort of like that we could cover this and they could take that hit within their budget, or would this be the kind of thing where we'd have to, you know, make cuts outside of the fire department budget? Because that's a relevant distinction for me.
I don't know how to answer that, except in 2008 when we had similar budget issues, there was a lot of layoffs across the board in every department. So I don't know how.
I guess what I'm saying is, so if you have a department that wants a thing and that thing is expensive, and we don't know whether we're going to be able to pay for the thing, then the real question that I have is, if we can't pay for the thing, what gets cut, right? And if they say, oh, well, there's some, you know, alterations that we could make to absorb the cost of this without it hurting anybody, you know, like other city departments, and here's our suggestions, that's something that makes me maybe more open-minded to this. But if the idea is that, like, oh, if we have to absorb this cost, it'll end up leading to cuts across the city, then that, I know that ultimately they're not necessarily the ones making that call. I'm just interested, like, since they're the ones that are benefiting from this, I'm just sort of interested in what, you know, what's the suggested path if we can't pay for this?
I think we have to pay for the contract.
Right. So then what do we cut instead?
You have to reduce numbers, personnel, I believe. I mean, Mayor, do you want to try anything to answer, Tom? Is it appropriate? I can't. Do you want me to unmute you?
I'm trying to point down to Jen. Jen's been raising her hand.
Oh, Jen, sorry.
Yeah.
There's too many faces on my screen. Jen.
That's okay. And we're obviously all in different orders because she was pointing down to me and she's to my left. So I don't know what that's all about. But
you're to my right. So.
Just to speak to what Councilor Peak was asking, I think that, and I think I'm getting what you're getting at. And under normal circumstances, you know, if we got to a point where this contract, say, was voted in, and then somewhere down the line, COVID, worst case scenario, we don't have the money to fund this in full. You know, the city always looks at things as a whole. So, like, if it were that, you know, the fire department, you know, said, oh my God, well, our budget's taken a real hit from the COVID. We're not getting reimbursements. And so, you know, we're going to have to lay off. I mean, we would, as an executive team, along with the mayor, we would look at the budget numbers and see, is there somewhere that we can take this money from to avoid these layoffs? The problem we're going to run into this year is this budget is so bare bones that there's not going to be any extra money. I mean, I can pretty much guarantee that there's not going to be, you know, money to fill the kinds of appropriations that this contract would require. But, you know, I mean, I'm just speaking kind of in terms of what the normal process would be. And, you know, so we would look at it and try to see if we could do anything other than layoff. But there's not any extra really anywhere this year that would, you know, be able to fill in any gaps. So.
And I can say this safely, that our savings, our free cash, our stabilization accounts most likely will be needed, hopefully not, to maintain the budget as it is, the very tight budget. If we don't get revenues from the state, the mayor and the finance team are going to have to examine if we can use those savings. That is not to cover anything new, that's to cover where we are. That's my opinion anyway. But Bill.
Just a question on, kind of snowballing off of Tom's scenario. Say we are to lay off even one firefighter, then that would bring their staff count down below what we need for the grant, and then we would lose the grant, so we would additionally lose 4 firefighters in that scenario. So then the overtime would go up and we'd be spending more in that sense, right? So that would be, even just one firefighter getting laid off would really be 5. I mean, we might be able to keep on 2.
That's true. Anybody else? I'd like to move to a motion. Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, and I would say under normal times, Councilor Lynch is right on the base, and I know that both former Chief Motter and Deputy Chief Henneman have been very strong that if we don't fill all of these positions, we'll lose the grant. We are expecting waivers around COVID and open positions, as well as cities and towns not knowing revenue. While the intent at all is not to lay off any firefighters, and I do believe that there is money in the budget going forward to fill all of the positions, whichever remain open. I just also want to assure the council and the city that we're working closely. I'm working closely with FEMA and again, Senator Murphy's office to make sure we have the flexibility we need with that grant, but also assure folks that there's a plan A, B, and C to make sure we fulfill that grant.
Okay. Anybody else? I'd like to move to a motion if we can. We have other items on the agenda. Councilors Coniff and Lynch, are you okay with moving to a motion?
Sure.
You have to move each one separately and move it in the positive. So I'll take in a motion to approve $50,903.58 interdepartmental transfer to fund the first year, the 2020 fire salary year. Can I have a motion to that effect?
Yeah, the motion will be $50,954.74 to provide.
My mistake, yes.
I'm sorry, Dan, what?
No, you were correct. You're correct.
Okay. To provide funds for the rest of the fiscal year for 2020 for firefighter salaries due to the union contract. That's the motion.
You second, Bill? Yes?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Lynch?
No.
Councilor Coniff?
No.
Councilor Riss votes no. Second supplemental appropriation for $116,964.99 to fund the 2021 fire and ambulance budget for the union contract. Do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Bill?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Lynch?
No.
Councilor Coniff?
No.
Councilor Riss votes no. So these will be up for public hearing, and I'm glad a lot of the other councilors were here this evening. You heard all the discussion. The public hearing is next week. I invite everyone to come and again state your preferences. We're going to move on to other items on the agenda, if that's all right with everybody. The next 2 items are Community Preservation Act requests. And I know that Jackie, are you still with us, Jackie? And Jamie is here.
Indeed, I am.
I want to start with the $300,000 for rent relief. As the chairman of the CPA, I'm very proud of this because under the affordable housing tenet of the CPA, we can do this, and I didn't even think we could. I believe it helps, bottom line, it helps keep people from homelessness. It does a little bit. Boston is spending millions to do this. We don't have that, and we don't have money in our general fund, as we've just discovered, to give rent relief. What the $300,000 pays for is for an outside agency which will bid on a contract to distribute these funds. The request for proposals, or RFP, will be issued as soon as the money is appropriated. We were told by accounting that we can't really do an RFP until we have the money in place. There is going to be an administration cost, and that's probably where there's going to be some bidding going on. So if there's $50,000 at administration cost from that agency, there will be $250,000 to give rent relief. And I believe, Jamie, I don't have it in front of me, so correct me if I'm wrong, $3,000 maximum out of per person. It'll be given to landlords who have to agree to it. And
I believe that the maximum was 4,000.
Jackie, you
double check.
I thought it was 3,000. Anyway, I did math way back when we had the CPA meeting, and it was 81 people could be helped if there's 250,000 available. Now that's 81 people we don't have that wouldn't be helped otherwise. So I want to ask Jamie or Jackie, can you go into the other elements of the RFP? Jackie, all right, Jackie, that might enlighten the council as to what we're asking the agency to do for us.
Sure, and Jamie, jump in, or we actually have 3 members of the Easthampton Fair and Affordable Housing Partnership on the call right now. So myself, Ken Iavecchia, and Brad Riley. Thanks, guys, for joining.
Oh, I didn't know. Thank you very much.
Brad's brand new, so we won't call on him. But Jamie, jump in if I miss anything, okay? Because we worked on this together. So the idea is that we know that folks in rental units are struggling to pay rent at this moment because people are not working. And the idea was to find a way to put some money aside for them to have for rental relief for up to 4 months. And I'm looking at what we have put in the program guide is they could get, if it's a 1-bedroom or an efficiency, they could get $500 a month. If it's a 2-bedroom, they could get up to $750 a month. And if it's a 3-bedroom or a 3 or more bedroom, they could get up to $950 a month. And again, it would be for no more than 4 months at a time or $3,000. So that's sort of the baseline for that. And we're really looking to target this at folks at or below 100% of the area's median income at this point, because CPA funds can be used for that income range.
We were looking at a gap, right, Jackie, between 50 and 100, because below 50%, there's a lot of other programs. But the gap that we're trying to fill is the 50 to 100, and that's part of the RFP, correct?
Yeah. And
they want to accept applicants below that?
So I want to clarify a little bit about that, because there are some other programs to help folks who are below 50%. It's not clear to us how easily accessible they are for folks in those income groups. So the idea is to encourage folks who would be eligible for those other programs to apply to those as well. But we're not going to say they can't apply if they're struggling to get that money or if that money is already used. For example, Hampton County has had a lot of folks who are applying for rental assistance who are at that much lower income level. And often folks in Hampshire County struggle to get some of that money. So, I think at this point, the priority is for folks at 50 to 100% of the area median income, but we want to make sure that we're available to other folks as well if it's necessary. That was the discussion we had at with the housing partnership.
And to make sure everybody understands, my only thing was it has to be Easthampton residents, and that's right at the top of the RFP. They're only going to provide help for Easthampton residents. It's Easthampton CPA funding.
Correct.
So everybody knows that. Any other members of the Housing Authority want to make a statement or anything? I want to compliment the Housing Authority, Jackie, and the whole group for really working hard on this. The RFP is, well, it's a legal document, so it's a lot of work, and I was very pleased. And you're pretty confident there'll be an agency or two that'll bid on this, Jackie?
Yeah, we are pretty sure that that's what will happen. And can I make just a friendly amendment? We are Easthampton Fair and Affordable Housing Partnership, totally different from the Housing Authority.
Oh, I've been doing that for years.
It's all good.
No, it's not.
That was just a friendly reminder, Dan.
Partnership. No,
Yeah. It's okay. I just don't want anyone else to feel like they aren't sure who's being
housing
represented here.
partnership.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to just also mention that Kate Shapiro and I both reached out to some landlords in town because we were trying to get a sense of what the need was right now. And it sounds like Parsons Village, there's like a 30 to 40% of folks who are struggling to pay their rent at this point. I also reached out to a couple of other landlords with some apartments, and they didn't have a ton, but they both said, we have some people who are struggling who have told us, and we suspect it's going to get worse over time. And we're going to continue to do that outreach to those landlords as well.
Did they indicate they'd be fine with this kind of program because they get paid from this?
They're really excited about it.
That's good to hear.
And they're all folks who live in Easthampton and, know about the work that we do with CPA and so forth.
And so everybody understands, this money goes to the landlord. It can't be used for anything but rent.
Correct.
Anybody else from the housing partnership? No?
So I'd just like,
Jamie, go ahead.
yeah, I'd just like to add that the to some background, the state there's for that 50% and under group, there is the RAFT program and the ESG housing program, which is typically been available for families under making less than 50% AMI. The state recently took some of the CARES Act money and is putting another $10 million to RAFT to support the 50 to 80% AMI. And the big concern is that when all of these, there's a lot of stopgap measures through the state and the Fed that are stopping eviction moratoriums and not allowing those eviction notices to be served or heard in court. But as those temporary measures sort of elapse, that we think that there's going to be a huge crunch of landlords just trying to evict their tenants who are owing back rent. And this program that would set up would allow tenants to apply for the back rent, or if they don't have money in savings and they're not employed, they would be allowed to draw on this for rents going forward.
Any questions, Dave?
So I think this is spectacular, number one. Just trying to understand how it works. So I'm a landlord and I have 10 or 20 renters who are going to, my assumption is they're going to apply through this consultancy group or this third party that you're going to set up. They will apply, does the renter apply or does the landlord apply on behalf of the renter? And part B to that is, does an individual landlord have a cap for how many people they can have under this particular program?
I think it's the renter only, right, Jackie?
So those are good questions. And in answer to the first one, the renter is who applies, and what they'll have to do. So we're imagining it'll be a nonprofit like HAP, now known as Wayfinders, or Valley Community Development Corporation, or Community Action, an organization like that that's used to doing income verification for its clients. So the renter will apply. They'll have to do an income verification to prove that they're eligible for the program. And the way that the RFP is set up is that if there's an overabundance of applicants, there will be a lottery for folks to have access to the money. We honestly don't know exactly what the need will be. And no, we didn't make any consideration for, this landlord can only have 5 people applying. I think it's really about the renters. The landlord gets the money because that's who it's owed to. But it's really about keeping those renters in their apartment.
Okay.
Mayor, you have your hand up?
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to express very strong support for the program, and thanks to the Affordable Housing Partnership and CPA, Jamie, for getting all the tech specs together, and everyone who really made this possible. I think it's a tremendous needed tool now in Easthampton, but I would also hope that this tool and relief remains available going forward, whatever is deemed the end of COVID-19. I think this is a great tool and way to give some instant relief and housing security in Easthampton with a ever-changing economy, especially what we've seen with the increase in taxes and just cost of living. So thank you, all involved.
I just want, she brings up a good question. Jackie, did we put a date that this would end, or is it just open-ended until the money's out?
And I believe it's open-ended until the money's out, right, Jamie? Unless I'm forgetting something.
Yeah. So in the RFP, we say that it's, we expect that it's going to be a 6-month program or so, that we expect to go through the funds pretty quickly. And there was talk about, if needed, would we come back for another appropriation to CPA to continue the program. There's some going from an emergency rental assistance program to a sort of year-round rental assistance program is a different. It's a different type of program, and there are different requirements at the state level for what constitutes housing discrimination. And so for an emergency rental assistance program responding to COVID, we can keep it as a 3 or 4 month program of assistance, and it's for people who are already living in Easthampton. If we were to have a year-round rental assistance program, it would have to have a different RFP to do that type of program. We have to make sure that we're not discriminating against residents and other people who want to move to Easthampton. The money would still have to be used in Easthampton, but someone could move to Easthampton and then use rental assistance program. But that's not this program. That would be a different program.
So
it clears mud.
Okay, that clears it up. Mayor, is your hand up?
No, my hand was up before, but I think this is a great pilot, and thank you, Jamie, for the distinction between the two. I just think it's a great tool, and we've been really hard pressed to come up with good housing projects and help for the city, and I fear that we just lose out to bigger developments and the cost of affordable housing. So if this is at all or something like it can help our existing housing stock, I really would welcome the conversation but first and foremost, appreciative of what's happening here tonight. Thank you.
Jeff.
Thanks. Yeah, I kind of just want to echo a couple of things the mayor is saying. I mean, I think that I want to thank Jamie, and I want to thank the partnership, and I want to thank CPA, because this is an example of something that we were never doing before. So over the past couple months, this has really been, a pivot. Jamie spent a lot of time kind of working out all the mechanics of this. This is something that we haven't done before, and I think it's just representative. We're trying really hard to access the funds that we can find. So this is another, this is one for rental assistance. And Jamie, I do want to give a lot of credit to Jamie, because we're also looking at community development block grant for business assistance. So we're trying to do what we can with some of these existing funding sources, and it really, it's important just to know that it's a lot of effort to get this done. And I'm happy that it kind of originated with CPA. CPA was 100% supportive, and I hope that the full city council votes for this. It's really important, and I think it's just a good demonstration of us trying hard to find the funds that we can when kind of in fast action. So I'm appreciative to everyone who's been working on it as well.
Just a couple other notes. The CPA approved this unanimously. I believe it was an 8-0 vote. I'm not positive on that. And secondly, there is significant funds left in our budget that we felt confident that we weren't hurting future projects by putting this forward. Tom.
Yeah, so I think this is awesome, and I think that this is, you know, when there's a crisis like this, it's, you know, often an opportunity to try something out in a crisis and then sort of see where it fits into, you know, sort of life going forward. So very excited about that. Really, really support it. I just want to say, for the benefit of people who are watching, who might not be familiar with the nature of the CPA money, that this money is restricted in what we can do with it. And that this money doesn't go to fund sort of just general city operations. I say that because, you know, this committee just took a pretty tough no vote on one sort of large item, and then is going to go vote on to another item. So I just want to make it clear, these are different buckets of money, and the things that we can do with CPA money are pretty limited, but do include this sort of thing that I think is a really good idea.
Very good point, Tom. Bill?
Thanks, Dan. I just had a couple questions. So, you know, looking at it, I just want clarity from Dan's comment when he introduced it. It says here to support at least 100 people, but you said 81 people or residents, families?
I don't know if I said 100.
Well, no, the paperwork says at least 100. You said 81, so I want to know, I just want to see, you know, kind of like the ballpark. Are we helping?
Jamie may have, if it says 100 in the agreement, Jamie's numbers are better than mine. I did some rough math, and that was dependent on how much the administration cost was. At $3,000 divided into 250,000, but if Jamie put at least 100, is that what you put in the agreement? I don't know.
It says at least 100 Easthampton households are experiencing housing insecurity. I think
at least 100 are experiencing it. Okay.
I think what I meant was approximately 100, but it's hard to know with the maximum grant is $3,000, but it's dependent on the size of the household or the number of bedrooms, the size of the household, the amount of need. So it's hard to estimate exactly how many households it's going to help.
Okay.
I see the difference there, Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear that up in my head too, which is, I mean, that's fine. And then just for educating my brain as well on this, it's a grant, but we're pretty much providing this grant for the community, right? It's not state matching us anything. There's no reimbursement. It's all on us helping our citizens, right?
It's one of the few let me ask, one of the few projects CPA does that doesn't leverage funding. I know there's one coming down the pike from Jeff for the Mount Trump Trail, where if we give 150, the state gives us 400. That's the kind of project that we usually fund. But this is all in from the CPA. And I wish there was something out there. Maybe there is, but we also had some urgency to this to get it done, because I've also heard that they might drop the eviction restrictions, and we got to get this to people. So if there's other grants we could have leveraged with this funds, I didn't know about them. Jamie, there isn't any, are there?
Correct. I mean, and I would add that although it is all being funded out of Easthampton CPA funds, about 20 to 30% of the local CPA funds were matched by the state and are matched every year. So, it's not to say that it's entirely just raised from local revenue. There are some state revenues that come into play that's already been given to this CPA. And when you consider that there are lots of programs in place for, or that were created under the CARES Act for the under 50% AMI, the 50 to 80% AMI, and that CPA is the only program that allows funding residents up to the 100% AMI. You can look at that. It's not being matched by other programs. It's not like a statutory match, but it is it's being supported with other programs that are out there. But no, there's no direct match.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good call out with the state matching on the CPA funds. There's two more things. Is this something that the mayor might be able to take towards COVID and see if there's any reimbursement on that? Because no? Okay.
No. It's a good try though, right?
Yeah, I mean, any kind of reimbursement we can get, I think we should look into. And then just the last little question or whatever is we're sending out the RFP once goes through the process. If approved, we send out the RFP, and then people are going to come back. The contractors are going to come back at hopefully somewhere in the ballpark of 20%. Is that 20% of the $300,000? So really, that's 60 grand right off the top that would go to the contractors for their support.
That's correct. I'm hoping it's not 60 grand. I maxed out at 50, but we don't know. The other thing to mention is other cities are doing this, and I think, Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the good things about this is if one of the agencies is already working with Amherst and they bid, and they could bid maybe less to do this because it makes it easier for them.
Yeah, I think there's some
advantage to that agency because they're working with a different community.
I think there's some economies of scale that we could have if we had the same agency working with a number of towns doing a similar kind of program. And for sure, yes, and Amherst is doing the same program. In fact, they were very helpful in helping Jamie, who did a fabulous job on the RFP, put that together.
So hopefully it would be less than 60. 20% is the maximum, I think they said.
I think we said up to, yeah.
Yeah, they've asked that they keep it below 20% for the total amount.
Is that it, Bill?
Yeah, that's it. I think this is great. Thank you.
JP.
Thank you. And thank you to the Fair and Affordable Housing Partnership for all the hard work. That is great to have this program that we can get out there as quickly as possible. With regard to some of the specifics of the program, in terms of setting the $500, $750 and $950 for one bedroom, two bedroom, and three or more bedrooms, how did you come up with that figure is one question that I have. How did we come up with the 16% administration? Someone had said $50,000 for $300,000 grant. That's question number two.
They bid that up to 20% of the 300,000. So hopefully it's less than that. Hopefully it's 16%. But that's where the bidding goes in, I guess. Jackie, can you answer the question about how did we arrive at the different levels of help?
I'm not entirely sure. I think, Jamie, did we look at just kind of where rents are at, and that's where that came from?
Yeah, and that was Amherst was using the same numbers. So we looked at what we're doing, and our rental market is similar enough that we felt comfortable with those numbers. We also, the guidelines that are put into that program they're guidelines. They're not strict program requirements. So we're hoping that as part of this RFP, that the bidding agencies will look at these things and go, well, actually, if you change it, if you make this modification, the program will run better, or we can do this program with a lot less administration and overhead, and we can give out more grants. So it's a guideline, but it's not set in stone.
Is the $3,000 maximum per family, or per household, a guideline or a set limit?
I mean, this whole thing is it's all guidelines. But there are some things that we're going to be more or less able to negotiate on And I think that the $3,000 per family felt like a good starting point, 4 months of support. But again, if our chosen consultant says, it should be 2,000, or if they say it should be 4,000, we'll look into that. And we're trying to get some money out to people who need it. We're not trying to necessarily get, not everyone's going to get everything they need
Sure.
out of this program.
I have a question regarding public housing.
JP, Jackie wanted to say something.
Yeah, just to address JP's concerns, I think, the agencies that we're imagining will bid on this will actually have some of the information about what the need is. It's what they do. I mean, they work in these communities all the time. So, we put that out there as guidelines, but we're hoping to work closely with whoever this agency is to make sure that we're coming up with something that actually is going to serve the people that need to have help. So this is kind of our best guess at what the guidelines should look like. But again, we would work with the agency to make sure that it makes sense for who needs help.
That help, JP?
That's great to hear. I think that helps me. There is no asset requirement, just an income requirement, right? Okay, so that answers that question. I'd love to see this get out as soon as possible. With regard to public housing, if you're on public housing at this point, either in one, let's say in an Easthampton Housing Authority project, and you wouldn't be eligible for any of this funding, I would presume. We're looking at kind of like the private sector marketplace for the most part, for people who aren't in public housing, who don't have Section 8s, et cetera. Is that correct?
So those are already based entirely on income anyway, JP. So if I'm in a housing authority unit, it's already based on my income. So if my income falls to zero, right, they're going to make that work. So this is for folks who are not in those kind of already subsidized to that level sorts of units.
So we're going to reach the 50 to 100% median income and get people who are not in other programs. This is exactly what I think the city needs. Thank you very much.
I agree. Other counselors? I see Salem's here. Omar? Counselor Condon? Peg, go ahead. Peg?
This is a very, and this is just a question that is because my brain thinks in a whole different way. In the documentation that is provided to us, it talks about coming from the CPA Reserve Fund, some more money coming from the undesignated fund balance, and then the lion's share coming from the community housing account. Is that the affordable housing account? I didn't know we had a community housing account.
Yes, I think it should have been called affordable housing account.
Yeah, for the CPA refers to it as the community housing account, I believe. I don't know what that's Val in the what the account name is. It's a community housing, or if it's affordable reserve for affordable housing. I try to follow it, but sometimes I get confused between what the CPA calls it and.
If I see one and I see the other, they mean the same thing.
Yeah, the account numbers are the same. It's the 3243 is that affordable housing one.
Okay. All right, that was my only question.
Our policy in the CPA, and I think we've had this discussion at the budget level, is to spend down all of those areas that have reserved funding first before we get into our undesignated funds, so that we use up the affordable housing account first, which is why the bulk of it is there.
Yep.
That's the policy of the CPA. Because those funds can't be used for anything else. The ones that are in that, they can't be used for open space. They can only be used for affordable. Any other questions? JP?
I just wanted to, I see we have lots of people on, probably from the last discussion still on another matter, and just wanted to clarify again, I appreciate Councilor Peaks mentioning that these funds are not available for any other purposes except for the CPA purposes. But in addition to that, there are minimum required amounts of money that the state requires the city to spend during a given year, and we're required to spend at least 10% of the funds collected and given to us as state matching grants in a given year on each of the 3 categories. So,
very good point.
Just wanted
And
to
you
be
can
sure
see
that
that
was also mentioned.
The community housing account, or the affordable housing account, was at almost $223,000 because over the last few years there have not been many housing appropriations. So the city has not been spending the 10% in the past few years. So it's actually been setting it aside, which is why that accounts at the 223, roughly 223.
Right, and we're
If you don't spend it, you
glad
can't.
to be able to have it available to spend it this time. This is a very important need.
And I'm sad that we don't have more affordable housing programs, but I know the Housing Partnership is working on it. Maybe. Anybody else from the council or anyone? Then I'll take a motion to approve $300,000 for the purpose of contract a local nonprofit agency to administer short-term emergency rental assistance program for Easthampton residents.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve $300,000. Any further discussion? Councilor Lynch?
Yes.
Councilor Coniff?
Yes.
I vote yes. The next item on the agenda is $36,000 from the CPA, voted unanimously by the CPA for Jeff Bagg's request for an open space and recreation plan update. As I recall, Jeff, this is necessary to have in place because it helps us get grants. Is that too simple?
That's correct, but it's required. So we have an open space and recreation plan that expires in October of 2020. We've always had a valid, up-to-date plan, and what the state is doing with a lot of their grant programs is they have sort of their overarching goals, and you have to be taking steps to stay in line with their goals. And if you do that, then yes, you can get, in some cases you can get extra points on grant applications. For the work that we've been doing off East Street in particular, so we acquired the parcel with Kestrel last year, we wouldn't have been able to get the park grant without the open space plan being up to date and valid. Because it's the way that my brain works, we are really preparing pretty hard to apply for another park grant in July. And I've had now 3, I've definitely had 3 discussions with the grant administrator at the state to say that, so we're going to apply in July, but our plan expires in October, and we may not be finished with the updated plan until December. And so, her response every time has been, if it's valid and in place when you apply, then you've met our criteria. It could be something that I put aside and I don't deal with it at all. But that's going to, be really detrimental to us next year when we want to apply for some kind of grant, especially so that Executive Office of Environmental Affairs is the state agency that oversees, this and other grant programs. So that's kind of one element. The other element, which is in my cover letter, and it went to CPA, and I hope that it's in the council packet at some level, and if not, I'll dig it up for the meeting next week. But it's really important that we are planning for what to do with our open space and to find the areas that are important to protect. And we have a lot of really great opportunities in Easthampton to continue to do more. So there's a lot of references to Nonotuck Park in the open space plan, and there's a lot of action items that we want to build on. We want to get more community input. This plan is from 2012, so while that's not that long ago, things have been coming through the planning department, the mayor's office, other offices. People are doing different things for recreation now than they were in 2012. So we've been asked for a skate park. we have been having discussions about a dog park, and coincidentally, the dog park is in our 2012 plan, and it asked for a 7-year action item, and so we did start to do that in the 7th year. But so skate park, dog park, we've been approached several times by people who want to consider frisbee golf. We've had the discussion about bocce, and there are these different types, and mountain biking, that was the other one I wanted to mention. So we have all these groups who are doing these things in Easthampton, but really they're not even mentioned in the open space plan currently. And so as we evolve as a community, I really want to use this opportunity to take a good look at a survey that goes out to the community and really understand what people sort of want and need in terms of our open space, and it really gives us direction in the future. And coincidentally, we're hoping to get the survey out sometime, basically this summer. So July might be a little aggressive due to some slowdowns with COVID, but by August, and just anecdotally, we've seen such an uptick in people getting outside since the pandemic started. It's been tremendous. I've gotten, I see people out everywhere, all kinds of trails. I've heard people complain that the trails have been overutilized. And we have really no plan for trail upgrades or, ways to get parking areas, signs for our conservation areas. We've really not done that much. We've acquired a couple of really important open space parcels, but the open space plan is something that we really need to do for a bunch of different reasons. It's not just to, get grant points, but that is important in the long run, that we have the plan and it gives us a path to pursue. So just quick, my last pitch is just things like mountain bikes. So there are groups who have approached, my office saying, we want to upgrade the trails. And I look at some of the grant criteria. So we looked at one for mass trails, and I look in the open space plan, and mountain biking is not even listed in our current plan. So it makes it really hard for us to go for a grant and say mountain biking is really important, but it's actually not listed in our plan at all. So that's kind of problematic. And I think we're going to work with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. I've been working on this for several months. I tried another funding source before I applied for CPA, and we didn't get the funding source. We have a fully fleshed out scope of services that it was included in the packet. And so we're pretty much ready to hit go as soon as we get the appropriation at City Council.
I just want to state that although I kind of simplified it about the grants being what we're looking at here, that's why the CPA voted unanimously for this. It's because although it's all from CPA funds, it does generate the possibility of grants. You mentioned the park grant to me that we're going to apply for Mount Tom Trailhead, and we couldn't apply for that if our open space plan wasn't up to date. So that's an example of why we wanted to approve this, because it generates money. Even though we're spending it, we're going to generate funds by having it in place. And if I heard you right, if we didn't have an up-to-date plan, the park grant people would say, I'm sorry, we can't fund you yet this year, correct? Did I hear you say that? Because we do have one in place, but
yeah, we might be able to squeak by with this last grant application because we submitted it in July.
No, I'm talking about if we didn't even have the 2012 one, we wouldn't get anything.
Oh, no, yeah, if we didn't have to, yeah, no, exactly. And I give credit to the former planner, we have one. And so when I came into the position, we have one, which is great. And it's actually a really good plan, but it just needs to be updated, and we need to do it. So that, I know that the Parks Director has talked about, projects at Nonotuck, and we're going to need the open space plan in place for the Parks Department. So I want to shift park grant after the Mount Tom. If we're successful, we're going to probably shift to Park and Rec to help support them in applying for some park grants for either the Stone House, the pool. There's countless things at Nonotuck. And what we need is that we need the plan updated, and we need community support and survey responses that help us, show that Nonotuck's going to be, our gem that we really want to focus on in the future.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions from councilors? Peg or Bill? Peg. Peg, yes? Peg, can you hear me?
Yeah, you froze there for a second.
Oh.
Just a couple of questions on this. There is an attachment to this that has a spreadsheet attached.
Yes.
That sums up to $35,000. You're asking for 36, but if you actually add up the numbers, it's $32,110. So I know you're just messing with me, but where do all these numbers come at to land at 36,000?
That's a great question. I'm not sure why it totals to 32. I will double check that. It's supposed to total to 35. And then when I brought this to CPA, what I realized in the process was that extra 1,000 that I've added in there is because I want to do a citywide mailer. So I want to, similar to a project we just did for half the town, I want to send a postcard in the mail, but and we can do it through the USPS, but it's going to definitely cost about $1,000, and that's why I added the extra 1,000 because it didn't include that. But I don't know why the spreadsheet doesn't add to 35, so I can double check.
Okay.
What I'd ask you to do, Jeff, is to do a new spreadsheet, check the math, and add at the bottom of the spreadsheet the $1,000 for mailing, so that the budget that you're proposing matches. We went with the explanation at the CPA level, but I think the council will want those numbers. So if you could give those to us before next week, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's very easy. No problem.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Bill?
No, I had math questions too because they didn't add up, but thank you for the explanation, Jeff. I think this is good as well. In a nutshell, and just make sure I'm getting it right, this is really to update our plan for the city and add it and make it relevant to today's day and age from 2012. So we haven't had a plan updated since 2012 is what you're saying, and this will get us there.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair question, Bill. And it is. They're set to look ahead for 7 years. That's kind of like the way the statute is set up, and so we're right on target. It's just on a lot of these plans, it's front and center that they're going to expire, and so it really is. It's important that we get the funding and we start the process, and as long as we're underway, the state will be fine that we're underway. But yeah, the statute kind of sets up 7 years as the target date for an update.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Dan.
And we're going to add like everything that the Park and Rec Department needs, along with the mountain bike park and things like that will be in the plan. So when you apply for those project funds, they're in the plan, so the park grant people can see that. That's the point, right?
Yeah. And, Director Mason and I have talked about this. We're going to have a small steering committee to just move the process through, and he'll be on it. He was on the last one, I think, as well in 2012.
Okay. Any other counselors have questions? This seems like a no-brainer. Tom?
I have to jump off, but I just wanted to say that, yeah, this seems like a no-brainer, and I think it's a great idea. And obviously, we need to have an updated plan. So anyway, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tom.
Any other counselors? I haven't heard from Salem. I think he wants a mountain bike park.
That's true, I do. And I think it's a great idea. So I'm in full support of this.
Thank you, Salem. Anybody else? Can I take a motion, please? Oh, wait, did I see a hand? Who raised their hand? Oh, JP.
I just wanted to speak in favor. I appreciate, Jeff, all the work you do, and we want to be sure that you have the tools available to accomplish what you need. So I will be voting yes.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve $36,000 for the purpose of updating the open space and recreation plan in partnership with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to approve $36,000 from CPA funds. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Lynch?
Yes.
Councilor Coniff?
Yes.
And Councilor Riss votes yes, 3-0. Last item that I want to speak to tonight, JP, can you update us on, I guess, what you found regarding the CPA exemption? I think you mentioned that you looked into what other communities had been spending, and I also like to hear from you regarding how this would be administered so that we can move forward with this. I think you mentioned that we kind of need to vote for it in July to get it on the ballot in August. A lot of questions there, JP. Did you hear all of it?
Yes, we did. What we're talking about is the senior, low-income and senior exemption, which by state law is allowed for CPA. The really good news is, from the perspective of the budget, it doesn't affect the general budget. It affects the CPA budget to a small extent. Well, what's the average tax bill? It's around $250,000 in Easthampton. The first $100,000 of your taxes is already exempted from CPA. So we're only talking about a surcharge on the $150,000 for the average home between $250 and $150. Between $250 and $100. So there'd be $150,000, which for CPA surcharge amounts to about $88 a year per single family home. What we're talking about is an exemption for owner occupants. It has to be your domicile, so you have to live in this particular home. Of those communities, I believe 24 out of 34 had accepted this. And what I looked at was those communities that had a few, or rather similar single-family average value of, the average number of parcels. So we looked basically in the 4,000 parcel range for single families. And I looked at Wilbraham and Agawam because they were the most similar. And one of the communities had zero. I believe Agawam had zero apply, and Wilbraham had a total of 5 or 6 exemptions granted in the last year. When I looked at Northampton, it was a completely different picture, however. The Northampton had in the area of a few hundred people apply for the exemption. And I learned that it was basically I think the level of aggressiveness at looking at the cases. Northampton mails an application to each person who might be eligible. So they take that extra step. They then go ahead and call the people 2 or 3 times to be sure they're taking advantage of the program. I think what we need to do is to get out there that we have a program. If we pass it, let it be known. And I don't think we have to be as labor intensive in making sure everyone has an application and that they be reminded. Look, here it is. It's an exemption. For the average taxpayer, it would amount to about $88. If you're interested, there are certain income guidelines. Send us the application. That's what I would certainly think would be an appropriate way of proceeding, and I am still very much in favor of this program, and I would be good to get it out.
Just to comment on that, Northampton has a larger assessing department, so they can spend the labor to mail things out. I assume our assessors are going to administrate this, and I wouldn't want to put that burden on them. I think just putting announcements at the senior center would be what we could do, and any way else we could advertise it. But mailing out is a labor and an administrative cost that I don't think we could afford.
I agree. We're very lean here in Easthampton. I think previous mayors, current mayor, current councilors have maintained a very lean municipal organization. Yes, we don't have the funds available to be able to take that aggressive an approach. So I think our numbers, although they'd be higher than the Agawam and Wilbraham, would not reach what is in Northampton.
I agree. Councilor Khan?
Councilor Kwasinski, I know you had provided paperwork, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but one of the data points that we have in town is how many people within that category apply for other exemptions in the city. And so we have a sense as to, and I feel like it's in the 30 to 40 range at most, who typically apply for a lot of exemptions. Sometimes it's higher depending upon what we have. So unless I'm completely off base, I think that was roughly the population maybe that we need to even think about. If we bump it up to 100 even, that would probably be what, $8,000 that would come out of the CPA funds or would not be added into the CPA funds with an exemption of this kind. So, you know, quite honestly, any amount is helpful. So I think, you know, this is a worthy addition to our tool set for how we can help seniors with their expenses.
So JP, does this need, if we approve this, say, at the next meeting, I'm not sure it needs a public hearing. I have to talk to Barbara. It does have to go on the ballot. So what are the steps? You went through this?
Right. We would have to approve it at our next meeting, and then before August 1st, it would have to be vetted by it's according to the state law, by the attorney. So there would be some attorney expense, which I understand we don't have any funds for at this time, but that starting with July 1st, we could have that right on the attorney's agenda. I think there would be just to be able to write the questions. I took and sent to the counselors suggested language for the ballot question, but the ballot question, according to state law, has to be reviewed and prepared by the attorney, and then we have to have it in the hands, I believe, not by email, but by hard copy into the Secretary of State's office, I believe, before August 1st.
September 1st?
August 1st. So, yes. That's what Barb had suggested. There is some language in the law that says 60 days before the election, but Barb said, we're talking about a November election, which would put us, in September, but Barb felt that it ought to be prepared and in by August 1st.
Nicole, you raise your hand, Mayor?
Yeah. I think I just honestly missed this part. So as far as the mailing or the administrative cost for the program, how is that related to the $8,000 in savings just the ballpark of it? Because I know that there can be there's a back end charge. I'm just wondering, do we have that? Do we need more information from the collectors on that, Councilor Kwasinski, or maybe you have that and candidly, I just didn't hear it.
Well, I'm not sure I am answering your question. There are, back to Councilor Coniff's question you had asked earlier about the number of people who are already getting some sort of tax relief from the city. There's about 60 people right now that would be eligible for this also, and presumably would apply. So, and that may bump up. You had said 100 cases. That's true. And so we're already doing the income eligibility for the 60, so that's no additional administrative expense. It would be the people who would be eligible,
Gotcha.
Not because of the current circumstance, but because, so there would be some additional, but I don't think it's going to be a great burden on our.
Oh, okay. So it's not that we affirmatively have to mail a postcard out to everyone of a certain age. What we're talking about is actually what you just, nope, I'm good then. I follow that, Counselor. Thank you.
Yeah, we're saying we have a program. Here it is. We'll put it on our website. Here's the income eligibility. Excellent. Here's the process. Apply online if you can. Good. But no, I would not propose that.
Whatever we're doing for the 1,000 exemption is the same thing. We don't do a mailing for that, I'm pretty sure. For the exemption for 1,000, 60.
No, we didn't. I just don't. I'm learning about this as Councilor Kwasinski brings it up. So I was just making sure I heard things correctly, and I think I crossed what Northampton does with what we need to do. So I'll just. It's always easy just to forget Northampton, and I'll be fine, right?
I think that's a very good plan. So, Bill.
Just had a question more on the CPA revenue side of it. And first off, thank you, JP. I think this is great, and all your work that you've put into this is appreciated on my end here. With the way the tax revenue works or whatever, if something doesn't come in, everybody else kind of pays for that revenue to be supplemented or whatever. Is that the same concept with CPA money, or the city just doesn't get, say, that $8,000 or whatever in a period, and that's where the CPA builds their budget off of that new fixed number?
You got it. You got it, Councilor Lynch. The CPA would build the budget off the new figures. There would be no additional makeup by the general population.
Now, we're pretty conservative, as I said at the budget hearings. We don't even take into consideration the second state match. So the first year this happened, we had a figure of $6,000 was coming out because of the exemption. Then the following year, we would use that as a basis for building our budget. So, and I did some math, it's about $5,280 if it's $88 times 60 people. So if it's 100, it's 8,000. So it depends on how many people apply and the value of their home. So it's really hard to estimate, but when we were doing this at the CPA level, which we approved, it didn't sound like a tremendous amount of money, and given the fact that people at this income level and the seniors are hurting, this might not be a lot, but it's something. It's something we can do. So I appreciate it, JP, that you put this forward.
You're very welcome. Glad to do it.
If I can ask you then to provide with, I guess tomorrow, a motion for us to approve. I think you sent us an email.
I did.
For the next meeting, give it to Barbara tomorrow, that would be the motion, and that we would approve it. And then you had sample language, I guess you could send that to the city attorney with Peg and the mayor's approval after the motion. If it passes, the city council, of course. All right?
I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you. Then can we have a motion to approve this CPA exemption? I don't know what language you want to use, but.
How about a motion to approve the proposal to accept MGL Chapter 44B, Section 3E1, CPA tax exemption?
Second.
We have a motion on the floor for the tax exemption. Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, we can't do that. Bill?
Yes.
Peg?
Yes.
And I say yes. So it sounds like she had the motion for you, JP.
You did a good job with that. Good job.
Yeah, just get it to Barbara so we don't forget to vote on it. All right, and I imagine, do we have to do a vote after it comes back from the city attorney in August, or like September 1st?
No, I think we may have to. If there's changes, we may have to have something from in our first July meeting. Otherwise.
No, the July meeting is when we're going to vote on this motion now. It would be the first meeting.
Not next week.
We could vote on it next week.
July meeting. That's true. We would vote on it next meeting, yes.
Right, so if you wanted to have it in tomorrow, then it would be for the June 17 meeting.
I don't know. I think that's too soon.
We could run it past the city attorney.
Oh, yes. I think the question of running it past the attorney, whatever language we have, would have to be posed to the mayor in terms of, can we expend money in this fiscal calendar year prior to July to get this particular
ballot question approved, or do we need to wait until the calendar flips to July before we can talk to the attorney?
Let me get back to you.
Okay, fair enough.
Let me ask.
Well, let's say this.
And it'll be quick.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not pushing it up.
Let's get it in our packet for next week, and if we have to defer, we will defer.
I'll know by next week.
And we just don't send it to the city attorney till July 1. That's when we send it. And we don't.
Let's just
have to ask Barbara why August 1st. I think if we vote on it and it has to be approved again at the August meeting, that should be okay.
It should be, but Barbara was adamant that it is in the hands of the for the ballot by the state by August 1.
And part of this is driven by the fact that if we go to an election that is primarily mail-in there is a significant increase in manpower that will come out of our city clerk's office. And so anything we can do before the absolute deadline is, I think, where she was going with this. So anything we can do sooner so that we're not backing into what is going to be a tremendous mail-in campaign is the better thing to do.
Well, then I'll say this. We may need a special meeting in July if there's more work to be done on it. There is. We'll have a special meeting, second meeting in July, which normally doesn't happen, JP, if we have to. But I think it's valuable enough to get it done before August.
I agree.
I appreciate that. Hopefully we won't have to do this in July in a second meeting, but glad that option is available.
Okay, since the mayor's very tired, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, I was yawning too.
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah. Good night, everyone.
Are you in favor of adjourning?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Coniff, I'm in favor of adjourning. Thank you all. See you next week.
Bye-bye.